Hi, so this is Kumar Shivam from Bengal Chamber of Commerce and Industry. So we are going to start our today's webinar. Before starting, I'll just like to share a couple of technical briefs with all the participants as well as the speakers. For the sake of convenience and to make it comfortable for everybody to get the deliberations comfortably, what we are going to do is we'll keep the video off for all the participants. Also, their audio will be muted. Only the video and the audio options will be on for the speakers. So now what will happen is like say in between the session, if anybody has any question, you can put your question into the chat area and then it will be taken up by the moderator, which in turn will be shared with the speakers. Suppose if somebody is targeting a specific question to any specific speaker, you can mention it there as well. So I think this will be okay with everybody, and if speaker also wants to put in some kind of remarks or want to reply to any specific question, they can also use the chat option, and comfortably discussions can happen over there. With this, I'll request Mr. Deepak Daftari, who is the chairperson of the Entrepreneurs Committee of the Bengal Chamber of Commerce and Industry, to formally welcome everybody and initiate the session. Mr. Deepak Daftari.
Thanks, Shivam. Thank you all for joining us for another interesting session. As you all know, the Entrepreneurs Committee, representing the Bengal Chamber of Commerce and Industry, always tries to do sessions not only for the sake of doing it, but to add value, to give you real life perspective, and to make sure that the sessions are we have Madhu Amodia, we have Khyati Shah, we have Amrita Haldipur with us as our prominent speakers for the evening. We had Mr. Abhijit Hazra, also past chairman of the Entrepreneurs Committee with us. And I'm sure Meghdut is going to be a great moderator, asking questions which are very relevant, asking questions not only from the knowledge perspective, but also from a layman's perspective, and add a lot of value to the evening for your time. And I am sure that after the session is over, uh, most of us would not feel that we've wasted this 1.5 hours. So looking forward to a great session with the speakers, and over to you, Meghdut. Cheers.
Thank you so much, Deepak Da. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to another, what we hope to be is going to be a fantastic session with a great bunch of speakers that we've curated from across the country. And for a change, it's not just across the country, it's across the world for this session, because we have somebody who's originally from India, but currently in South America, who's very kindly woken up very early in the morning to come and join us for today's session. Before I get to the list of the illustrious speakers who are going to be addressing the crowd today, let me talk a little bit about what we will be talking about, what the speakers are going to be talking about. Good evening, everyone. For all those who are joining, some of them I'm guessing I've seen before, heard before. Some of you might be new, but for all of you, I hope there's something that you can take out of this session, because all of us at the Bengal Chamber are very excited about what we are going to witness today all together. So this particular session on design thinking and how it will help boost entrepreneurship in the new normal, it has been curated by Ecole Intuit Lab and Techno India University. And along with that, of course, the Bengal Chamber has been a constant support in terms of creating the environment for us to be able to put out sessions like this, wherein we're constantly striving to be better. And we know that the world has changed very rapidly in the last few days, last few months, in fact. And we've also figured out that there are a lot of things that we figured would be a problem and turned out to not be that much of a problem. And there are things that we thought that we had taken for granted, and those things have changed massively, right? We've for the longest term heard of terms like, for the longest time, we've heard of terms like frugal innovation, like open innovation, like design thinking. But what exactly are these terms? How are these concepts, or how are these frameworks going to help us glide through this new normal that we're calling, which the COVID-19 crisis has brought upon us, right? So these are some of the things that we'll talk about. So let me talk a little bit about frugal innovation, because I'm particularly a huge believer in that. In India, it's called Jugaad. A lot of you have obviously heard of that term. A lot of books have been written about it. Mr. Navi Raju, who had created that first ever centerpiece around what is today known as Jugaad, has gone on, and his TED Talk has reached so many people. And the idea is very simple. In a country like India, where we are very resource constrained, where we don't really always have the opportunity to innovate with the same kind of resources and networks that very developed countries have, we sometimes make do with less, right? And we think of innovative ways of solving everyday problems. That's basically what Jugaad or frugal innovation deals with. And if you look at that, in India, in a country like India, we went from a country of producing 0 PPEs to producing more than a million PPEs a day overnight, basically. When push came to shove, Indian entrepreneurs went out of their way to convert their existing businesses into things that would be relevant for now. And I think that flexibility, that ability to change constantly, change according to the needs of the market, needs of the industry, is what makes us great as an innovative nation. But that's not it, ladies and gentlemen. That's not it. Maybe it's a part of the overall design process, but where we want to see ourselves as a nation of entrepreneurs is where we'll be able to have very, very strong ecosystems supporting our entrepreneurs, where we have iterative processes of innovation, where there's constantly looking at, okay, these are my customers that I need to look at, coming back, iterating your processes, looking at prototypes, building new prototypes, and going back to the market with it. So there's not a one size fits all as a concept, which is what we want to talk today through our design thinking and entrepreneurship webinar. Without wasting too much time, I think I will start with a brief introduction of our speakers today. So we have 3 very interesting speakers with us, ladies and gentlemen, and I think it's also a very unique opportunity I have of moderating a session where we have 3 beautiful, super charismatic, and amazingly talented, all female crew of speakers. So personally, I'm very excited to be moderating this webinar. And if our previous conversations that led up to this webinar have been any kind of a precursor, I think you're in for a huge treat. So let me first get started with our first speaker for the day is Ms. Khyati Shah. She is an independent design and art director and design strategist. She has almost 16 years of experience working with leading agencies like the Alok Nandi Company, who actually happens to be the president of the Interaction Design Association, IXDA, Design Temple, and the WPP Group. She has built herself a diverse range of clientele and skills, and she continues to broaden her horizon as a remote consultant working from India and across the world. She's the person that I was talking about who's currently joined us from South America. She's currently in Colombia. I think partly she was already working there, but she also got stuck there because of the COVID crisis. But she's very kindly given us her time in explaining to us about her global vision of what design thinking is. Her illustrious list of clientele includes the Goethe Institute, Taj Group of Hotels, the Indo-Italian Chamber of Commerce, the Lodha Group, Sula Wines, Tata Trust, IDFC Bank, so on and so forth. And I think the common link with all of the other speakers for today is Khyati also has been associated with the Ecole Intuit Lab as a faculty for design and art direction since 2015. Thank you so much for joining us today, Khyati. Really looking forward to a fantastic session with you ahead. Moving on, yes, it's my pleasure. We'll come back to you very soon, but let me introduce the rest of the speakers for the session as well. We have with us Ms. Amrita Haldipur. She is representing the entrepreneurship and design side of things for today. With 14 years of experience in building brands, she's a global content marketing leader. She's an expert in local narratives to generate demand. I learned something very interesting about Amrita yesterday, that she basically acts as an outsourced chief marketing officer. And it's a very interesting job role if you think about it, because not a lot of companies can always afford, a lot of startups or SMEs cannot afford to have, onboard very, very talented CMOs like her, but she provides that as a service. So CMO as a service to various companies. She's led strategy, creative conceptualization, and pan-India marketing for various Nish Masi, two global content powerhouses, including the National Geographic Channel. She has built Think First Principles. That's a growth marketing company that she leads out of Bombay. And she's also an award-winning integrated marketing specialist, working with growing Indian and global startups, small to medium-sized businesses, and nonprofits to help them meet their KPIs. She's also a Girls X Tech champion, a Promax BDA India jury member, and her expertise lies in bridging the gap between marketing, social impact, tech, education, and storytelling. I think these kind of profiles you don't come across every day, so I'm going to spend extra long to get into the depth of each one of these profiles. Again, the thing that binds us to the rest of all of us, I think, is the fact that she has been a visiting faculty for entrepreneurship at Ecole Intuit Lab Mumbai. It's a pleasure to have you with us today, Amrita, and really looking forward to a super enriching session for all of our guests today.
Looking forward as well. Thank you.
And last but not the least, we have our very own Madhu Agarwal Amudia. She's the head of faculty at Ecole Intuit Lab Kolkata. For all of those who are not aware, Ecole Intuit Lab is a global chain of design schools, top-notch, some of the best, considered as some of the best schools in the world for graphic design, visual communication, storytelling, and has been rated as the best school in Europe many times. In France, I think, again, this year, Ecole Intuit Lab is considered one of the best design schools. She's a graphic designer from India with over 20 years of experience in advertising and branding. And she has completed her education from London College of Communication in 2006, worked with massive brands, again, like CNBC, Unilever, Johnson & Johnson, Band-Aid, two massive NGOs as well, like Ambuja Foundation, the Tata Institute of Social Sciences, and Point of View. She has taught design at some of India's finest design schools and loves working with students and evolving their design sensibilities. And her strength in marketing and typography has resulted in a very interesting spectrum of work for her. Her work was displayed in the V&A Museum during the London Design Festival in 2013. What an honor to have you with us, Madhu. Of course, we keep interacting on a day-to-day basis, but I guess the fact that all of the other participants today also get to interact with you, I'm very excited on their behalf.
Thanks so much, Meghdut. I'm also really looking forward to the session. Thank you.
Great. So, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you have your seatbelts on, because it's going to be quite a ride the next couple of hours. I hope you at least have till 9 p.m. Scheduled out on your calendars. If you have parents or if you have children around, or if you have people who you're expecting, make sure that you let them know, put a disclaimer outside your door, busy or out of order, whatever you want to do, because this is something that you would not want to miss. So let's get on with today's session. We'll first begin with Khyati. Khyati currently, as I have mentioned before already, she's currently in Colombia, and being a designer from India, he's designer, not just a designer, but also a design thinking expert and a design director from India. She's seen the best of both worlds. And the pandemic has struck every single industry across the world, irrespective, of their size. So this is something that I would want to know from you, Khyati. How have you seen your experiences being in Colombia, and of course being part of the Indian diaspora currently in Colombia? I'm not sure there's a lot of people like you as well. You probably don't meet a lot of fellow Indians in Medellin, where you're from, where you are right now. What do you think? How has the pandemic really affected the kind of work that you do across various industries? For a lot of, just to give you a little bit of insight, I think a lot of people today here are from the world of IT, or they run their own businesses. They're definitely associated with the business side of things in Calcutta or in the east of India. What kind of tips would you have for them in terms of what kind of takeaways they can take from this particular webinar? If there's a framework you'd like to suggest, maybe just do a comparative analysis of the countries and across industries. We would be very excited to know from you. So over to you, Khyati, and hope we can learn a lot of things from you right now.
I hope so. Thank you so much, Meghdut, and thanks for the introduction. And hi, everyone. I'm really excited to be chatting with you guys. Also, Meghdut forgot to mention, this is probably like my first webinar, but I love to talk about design. So hopefully we'll get through this. It's been, to answer Meghdut's question, it's been very interesting being in Colombia in the middle of a pandemic. But just like traveling and living in a different place kind of makes you realize that people aren't, after all that different, especially in a crisis situation. People behave out of instinct. Industries are dealing and suffering in similar ways, whether it is India, it is Europe, America, or South America. The difference is the cultural nuances that bring South America a little closer to India in terms of how we're built, how the cultures have been evolving. And that is different probably from the markets in Europe and America. And the way everyone's dealing with the pandemic is probably what changes is the resources that are available to each country. Because within the country, people are all trying to do their best to survive and to sustain themselves, to reimagine their businesses, to rethink. People have been laid off like everywhere. It's I was traveling with a travel company that's been running for like 4 years, and they completely shut down with like 1,080 participants all around the world. So there's a lot of industries that have been affected badly, and then there are some industries that are doing really well. But just having spoken to people all around here, it seems like everyone's dealing in the same ways, and which I would love to like share at some point. Also, like go a little more into detail with that. But jumping back out into what design thinking is, and I'm sure that's what like most people are curious about, how they can use design thinking, what it is. And there are so many different concepts that we hear. I'm also assuming that everybody who's attending the webinar today has some sense or some idea of design thinking. We just don't know which of our ideas are correct, what it exactly is. There's also multiple definitions of design thinking. In fact, when I started in my design career, we would just think about like design as art, graphics, visuals, content coming together to, you know, like create communication. But then as you get older, as you keep like working, you see different businesses and how they evolve, you realize that design thinking is not just to do with art and design. It's not about like sketching and creativity and making things look good. If you were to even forget design from design thinking for a minute, it is really thinking. It is just thinking to put products and ideas and services out there. And subtly, I think we're all used to doing design thinking. We just don't realize it. I'd love to share a presentation, and then maybe like by way of that, it might just become easier to explain the point. I'm going to share my screen now. Okay, I'm not sure if you guys can see this. So can you guys see my screen? Okay. Okay, so obviously bringing us to the first slide of like, what is design thinking? And of course, if any of you guys have like thoughts, like add them into the chat box about what you think it is, what your idea of design thinking is, just any myths, notions, anything that you have. In the meantime, I'll go through some with you. So is it something designers or creative people use to generate ideas? Maybe creative tools designers use to generate ideas? Design thinking is for creative people. It is primarily an ideation practice.
The slide, I think you might want to get out of the full screen mode because it's taking the screen got blacked out for some reason.
Okay, let me see. Is this better?
Yeah,
should I start from an earlier slide?
Begin from the first slide. Yes, please. Thank you.
Okay, so we're back at what we think is design thinking. And again, I'm just addressing a lot of things I've heard in the past. When you Google, you'll find all these myths and notions and statements. Some may be true. Let's just like see. So a lot of people think it's something that designers or creative people use to generate ideas. Are they creative tools that designers use to generate ideas? Design thinking is for creative people. It is primarily an ideation practice, and you invariably see pictures of Post-its and brainstorming sessions as a gathering of design thinkers. Design thinking is followed to come up with new products. It's not for me. I'm in finance. I'm a banker. That's for my creative agency to handle. I'm a government organization. I run a service. I'm not trying to sell a product. I'm a businessman. I'm not creative. So what is design thinking, right? Like we have all of this. Is all of this wrong? Is it associated only with like creative people? Can businessmen not think creatively? Are they not producing ideas? Who is design thinking really for? So This is one of the common definitions that you'll find available. Design thinking is a human-centered approach to creative problem solving and innovation. Okay, innovation. How can design thinking help me innovate? What makes some people innovate and others not? So this is, I think a lot of people get bogged down by just these questions, and it seems like design thinking is a very theoretical subject where you have to learn and research and do a lot of that. And it's meant to be only for certain industries, which is an absolute myth. I very, very strongly believe that everyone is creative and anyone can innovate. And this is something that we see in very, very early examples. Design thinking, even as a concept, is not something that is new. It's been around for ages. It's, let's just look at a few examples which may help clarify that. So this is our very old datuns that used to be used as a toothbrush earlier, before toothbrushes came into being. The kulhards and the pattal leaves that were used for like food and drinking tea. Even the kulhards were made with a surface that would prevent your hands from like, you know, like holding, if you're holding something hot, the material and everything was made to handle that. The belan, the goti soda bottles, the knife sharpener, like we've seen this guy with a cycle, way too much swag, like way back in the day. We still probably see him around on the streets today. And even the smallest, the basic kachas that people used to use, or a little napkin that was used, or a cloth as lingerie, as underwear back in the day. All of these examples that you see have been around us. These were not thought about by a strategic creative agency, or designers didn't sit together to think like, oh wow, let's come up with this product. This literally came out of like somebody saw like a gap or a need for something and they created something. How many of these products do you think were even they were produced by design thinkers, right? And this goes way back before we even had any of these things. So this is where it's like really interesting to me, going back to these examples, because today we have technology, we have all the material that we need to build products, but when you didn't have anything and you came up with these products that are still being used today, what does that tell you about design? So this comes back to anybody can really innovate. We've also seen programs like the Shark Tank, right? Like that makes you realize that people sitting in their homes, people sitting in offices, friends sitting together come up with an idea. All these ideas are born out of an innate need for a service, for a product, for a better lifestyle to improve the quality of life. Coming back to design thinking is a human-centered approach to creative problem solving and innovation. These examples literally tell you that what you're trying to do in everyday life is find products and find ideas to create things that make your life easier. Also, I'm sorry about like these scribbles. I don't know what I scratched out on the screen right now. Okay, so what we're also talking about is that when you look at these products, did you sit and think that this is what design thinking is? I didn't like, when I looked at all of these things, it never occurred to me until maybe a few years ago when everybody started opening up to the idea of design thinking again. So we talk about it being a simple mindset shift and looking at innovative ways of solving problems. If you don't get bogged down by all the theory that you read online about what design thinking is, it literally comes down to you sitting and thinking that there is a need, I can fill it, I can think about something. A really good example of our day-to-day lives is also, for example, you have a loved one's birthday coming up, right? You don't just go to the market and buy something generic because it's somebody's birthday. You won't just buy a top for a woman and a book for somebody who loves to read, but you will put a lot of thought into what you're buying for them. That comes down to thinking about an individual and a person. And this is what we mean where design thinking is a human-centered approach. A human experience is at the center of it. When you design something keeping humans in mind, you know that idea will succeed as opposed to something that is mass-produced, that is probably talking to everyone. To further simplify this, I want to go back to a rural example of Lijjat Papad that's been around for 56 years. Again, I love giving examples like this because a lot of new age companies like Apple, Spotify, Mac, everyone's doing like an amazing job with technology, but they have all the means and the resources. This is a company way back in like all these years ago where they started off with an 80 rupee budget trying to fill a gap in the market. And let's see what that is. So if you're all aware of it or not, it was a company that started with just like a modest 80 rupees and now has annual sales exceeding rupees 301 crores. And they've just stuck to their core values about ensuring that every process runs smoothly, members earn a comfortable profit, agents get their due share. It's basically a group of women that came together to create a product that had a need, but also created a lot of opportunities and jobs. And just the way this company was run without any technology, without even probably the internet back in the day, they have an impeccable production, distribution, and sales mechanism and supports this like management system. It's generated thousands of opportunities for women. But apart from this, what they've done is that they keep women and they keep all their consumers. They basically took like housewives who wanted to earn money, who wanted to chip in financially or wanted to have like some purpose in life. Anybody can literally become an owner in this cooperation, right? And what that does is that gives the people confidence. You're creating empowerment, you're creating jobs for these people, and all the profits are shared among these people. They have everything figured out, from how the dough gets to the ladies, who are the ones who are actually rolling the papads out, then where the distribution goes, how it's being sold. It is so meticulously done that it's obviously a case study that is amazing to even go look into like at a deeper level. But when you think about this, I don't think the women sat there and said, we are design thinking and we're coming up with something innovative. They sat there, they saw a need, they saw like an opportunity, and they also decided that if you're going to think about the end consumer, that is where the satisfaction lies. That is where they're going to keep the consumers happy. And that is how they managed to take that 80 rupees and make it into a 301 crore industry. Again, if I give you just a few more examples, you've seen the Dabbawala system in our country, which is, again, they have the Six Sigma rating, something which is just a delivery service started so that wives could send hot, ready-to-eat food to their husbands. And just again, very meticulously, if you guys have all used the service at some point, you'll realize that they've probably never been late, they'll never been delayed, even whether come rain, hail, shine, anything, they're there. Right? And it's a very meticulous system of marking the dabbas. I don't like, probably they have like a 2% attrition rate of like something going wrong, and which is also like absolutely rare. So these are all examples that we have in and around us. We just don't see this as design thinking. And what I do want to leave you with is to think that it's just in your mind. If you think that all you're trying to do is solve problems in your day-to-day life, be it how you arrange your table at home because you want somebody to sit at the head of the family, the child to sit in like a stool near the mother so the mother can feed him. These are all thoughts that you're putting into the design of your everyday life. So what it comes down to is 3 principles. You think about desirability, feasibility, viability. If you take these 3 things and apply it to any business model, you will understand how design thinking works. Again, what did they create? Just to give you, going back to the example so that it's easier to explain, with the whole Lijjat Papad industry, they thought about, okay, is there a product? Is there a need for it? Who are we talking to? What is my target audience? The feasibility of it. How do we scale this? How do we expand? How do we reach out to the audience that we have around? And then the viability of it. So people also get bogged down because we think of design and business as 2 separate things. But the minute you start, like, design thinking just becomes second nature when you go from thinking about profit to people or purpose. It completely changes it. And that is all design thinking is. You just shift the focus. And then when you design with purpose, profit automatically follows. What sometimes we do is we think about the end result. We think about, I want to put out a product. Am I going to make profits? Am I going to make any money out of this? What is the satisfaction is giving me? We obviously want some end result out of it, right? But that end result will be a trial and error unless you keep a person, the user, in the center of it. The minute you start planning around that, you understand that your product will work because you're thinking about the person who's going to use it as opposed to a blanket audience. So when you're thinking about it, for ideas to be both successful and meaningful, create something that makes people's lives better, see if it's feasible to produce, and see if it makes good business sense. This is where design thinking comes into play, because we all have a lot of ideas, but they may not all be workable. They may not all be feasible. You have to think about budgets. So what design thinking essentially is, you take your creative ideas and you marry it with desirability, feasibility, and viability to see what the value is. So just coming back to something that we are all experiencing right now, I think the whole conversation about design thinking has come up a lot in the last 3 months, even though this as a concept existed for a long time. So when we look at our pre and post pandemic worlds, we've definitely changed the way we shop, the way we buy things, the way we are living. We've also realized we don't need that much to sustain ourselves on a day-to-day basis. People are rethinking what they're spending on things that they were mindlessly earlier spending on. When you're putting out a product, does this market really need it? Because no one's buying anything unless it's absolutely necessary right now. So a lot of people in the textile industry, in the fashion industry, they started making masks and PPEs and healthcare kits because there was a need there. If they continue to just sell their clothes and nobody's going anywhere in the midst of this pandemic, you're all stuck at home, nobody's buying that, right? So do you sit and be like, you just give in and be like, I don't know what to do with this pandemic? Or you apply yourself and see, what can I do? How can I maximize what the situation is? And that's exactly all these examples: donation kits, food delivery services, alternating, like there are schools which are being used as hospitals. An architect in Ahmedabad has created these cardboard beds for COVID patients because they're cheap, they're light. It literally takes 4 days to produce them. And they're and they also, because cardboard, the virus stays on cardboard for just like 2 or 3 days compared to metal or any of those surfaces. So everyone's just thinking about these little examples of how can you see that there is a pandemic going on. We do have a situation. How do we maximize what we can do with that? But they're also thinking about what people want. For example, when you think of hospitals, okay, so they're creating PPE kits, they're creating healthcare kits, they're creating ventilators, all of that. But if you enter a hospital and the hospitals are not sanitized, they're dirty, they're not well equipped, there isn't provision for people to like just feel comfortable, you're probably going to even die just of like the stress of being in an environment like that. So it's so important that in a healthcare environment, you think about your end customer and what will make him feel better at a time. Because the virus is going to stay, right? Like that's not going anywhere. We may all get it at some point. We may all recover from it. But the environment that we create around for the person in that time is what's absolutely important. And the same thing goes for small and medium businesses, manufacturing units. Things are shutting down. Unfortunately, that everybody is not able to sustain themselves. But if you take your product, you take what you were doing and apply your mind to it, think about what I can do with my business that can actually add value to people's lives, change the way you were thinking, change your mindset. If you continue doing what you were doing, you're again talking to masses that don't have a need for anything that was available in the pre-pandemic world. So this is something where design thinking plays like an important role. But the very, very important thing is all you need to do is think about people and the end use, not about profits, and don't think about design thinking as something that is only for creatives. Shark Tank and all these examples, you can literally be sitting in your living room coming up with ideas and taking that forward. And this comes down to the definition of design thinking, which is a simple mindset shift, looking at innovative ways of solving problems through empathy and collaboration. Empathy is one of the key aspects, because if you don't connect with the person you're talking to, how much can you sell to them? They may buy something, like we all love the iPhone. There are multiple other phones that come in the market that are competing with each other. But why do you decide to choose one particular phone over the other? Because they're connecting with you at a level, they're understanding that this is what you need in your services. From the Nokia days of like the single screen phones to like now having smartphones, it's all filling a gap. It's all filling a need for you. So that is what we're talking about. And then there's obviously like a framework that you've probably all heard about, which talks about there are 5 things that you can do as a design thinker, which is just a basic framework to help you get started with any idea that you have. The difference that the framework plays in is when you're thinking about everyday life, you're trying to make little design changes to help yourself and to make something better, to make your life better, to design surroundings. When you have to scale that to a business, be it a medium-sized business, small business, or like any large corporations. This is the framework that then comes into play where you apply these things to just make it a business, a scalable model, make it a beneficial, financially viable model. And there we talk about things like empathize, define, ideate, prototype, and test. I'm going to do a very quick overview on this because we can literally spend a long time just talking about each vertical and how it can apply to businesses. But what we're saying is conduct research to develop a deep understanding of your users that starts with asking the right questions. You can, for example, if you meet a person and you're looking at their phone and you're seeing what apps they're using, it tells you a little bit about their psyche or what their likes or dislikes are. But the minute you see the screen, for example, you ask somebody sitting next to you to share their screen saver with you, people have photos of families, people have photos of a destination they want to visit. All of that gives you an insight into what the person is thinking, and that's the insight you need to tap into. If we all just assume that, yeah, so this is the target audience and this is what they want to use, it's a very, very generic on the surface that you're touching people on. So empathy is very, very important because when you can empathize with somebody, you can actually understand their need a lot better. And then you take all that research and define, observe what your users' problems are and define what those problems are that need solutions. You don't need to think about this is the problem and this is directly jump to the solution. Think about dig below the surface and actually see what are the things that they are missing out. Again, then you just go into an ideation process where you generate a whole bunch of ideas, explore, experiment, think as creatively as you want, think with limitations, but don't restrict yourself on the idea level. Then you go to prototyping, which is basically all these ideas that you have. You take all those ideas and actually prototype them, put them out in the market, see how you can actually just create a little research group for it and see how feasible and workable these ideas are. And that's where testing comes in. And what this process, while you may to start off, you may do this in a linear way, but you can do a test and you get feedback from a client and then you realize that you need to change and add a few tweaks to the prototype. You go back to creating a prototype and then realize that you've overshot your budgets. You go back to the idea board and then be like, okay, I need to think of ideas. This concept works, I need to think of ideas that I can also create the prototype within my budget. Then you go back to the prototype stage, testing stage, you keep going back and forth. And that is how you keep coming up with that is how you keep innovating within your ideas. So one is to think about the design, think about what your idea is, but it is an always evolving process. It is a constantly evolving and growing practice that you get used to. So obviously, this is what I'm going to leave you with but I want you to think about how that design thinking is not a complicated process. Once you let that fear out of your mind, you just start thinking in terms of design. Everything else is just a framework. These are guidelines that you can learn, that you can practice and you can follow and get better with time and adapt to your business. So yeah, that's what I'm going to leave you with right now, and then come back for examples. And yeah, that's.
Thank you so much, Kathy. I think we already got a couple of very positive comments on the chat box, people saying that they really enjoyed the presentation. And why wouldn't they? Because you found a way to connect people's emotions with your presentation, talking about a brand that we're all so very well aware of, that we've kind of grown up with, Lijjat Papad, and how in itself, it was a design thinking experiment which went very well. And when the people who created Lijjat Papad, they probably themselves did not know that's what they were doing. So I'm sure that even amongst the people who are with us today, a lot of them have probably included design thinking principles and frameworks within their own business models, or in their own small and medium industries, or in their startups, but they just don't know it sometimes. So it's great to actually put like a face to the name, as you say. So that's thank you very much for that framework. And I'm sure
there's just so many examples that I'm like, okay, but I need to it's like an overload. You can keep discussing this.
Yeah, you have to share the time, so we'll have to move on.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that's it's just you have.
And we'll come back to you, of course, for sure, because I also had asked you what you thought of the.
Oh, I'm gonna stop sharing the screen.
Don't worry about it. I think when we move on to Amrita, she will share her screen again if she has a presentation. But we would also come back to you later on, because I have personally a couple of questions for you, and I'm sure some people in the audience might as well. But without any further ado, let's move on. The next speaker for today is Amrita Haldipur, and we would love to hear from you, Amrita. You've been part of the entrepreneurship ecosystem in the country for a while, and looking at it from a marketing perspective as well. You've taught at Ecole, and especially with the entrepreneurship program. I've been to the Mumbai campus many times, and for those who are for the uninitiated, it's got an entrepreneurship lab called the Kettle, where Amrita used to come, and I'm sure she does still now, come as a visiting faculty to teach entrepreneurship. So Amrita, my question to you is going to be on the idea of the digital space. I think a lot of people who are attending the webinar today are people from the IT industry, and a lot of people who might belong to more traditional businesses, but they don't really have a very good grasp over the digital transformation side of things. And right now in the current COVID situation, we've seen that almost all brick and mortar businesses have had to take some part of their businesses online, because just the marketplaces that we know do not exist anymore. So I'd love to know from you, what do you think of opening up new marketplaces with digital? How do you see the change in, we have seen a lot of monumental shift in the way that a lot of e-commerce businesses have popped up. A lot of non-traditional business verticals have opened up within otherwise traditional businesses. What are your thoughts on that, and how can traditional businesses for belonging to people within the number of people watching this show right now, what kind of advice would you like to give them with your many years in the marketing space? Thank you, Amrita. Looking forward.
Thank you so much. Good evening, everyone. It's really my pleasure to be a part of this amazing global webinar with my fellow colleagues sitting out of Colombia. I think, Mingo, the question that you've asked is a very deep question, and I think days are needed to answer that in depth. But I'm going to do diligence to share my thoughts on it in the next few minutes. I think first and foremost, I feel everyone on this webinar or whoever is watching it, this is something that I keep telling myself, and I would love for everyone to make this as an affirmation, is digital is a mindset, right? Digital is not something which, it's very easy for us. So right now, I'm not immediately going to start talking about who's in IT or who's in MSME or whatever, but I just want to also look at take over from what Khyati shared and give it a local spin, because that's also my expertise. And I feel before I get into the details of digital transformation, what I want to really talk about is, first and foremost, Khyati, what she spoke about Colombia, right? And like India, I think one thing in common is that both are emerging markets, and design thinking works the best in emerging markets from what one has studied, from one is still studying. I mean, as much as Khyati and I are so-called experts, but we are still learning, right? So I think it's very important to know that design thinking works the best where there are complex problems, where there are scarce resources. It really works. If everything is all sorted, then it's not the best playground for design thinking, right? So first and foremost is that. So I think on this note, I want to just start off with a presentation that I've put together. Sorry, just a moment. Hi, is this visible? Yeah, okay, cool. So taking on from what Khyati was talking about, that, there was a time when we have all, when as an entrepreneur, I think, and that's what I've been focusing the most while I've been teaching entrepreneurship in any capacity, whether it's with Ecole or anywhere else, is that, yes, I want to start my own business is always a thought we all have as entrepreneurs, right? But I think for long now, we've focused so much on profit and building businesses for profit that somewhere we have lost the focus on on purpose and people. And if you see what COVID has literally done is it's like a slap on our faces. It has brought us back to ask these questions, and all businesses are having to do that, and so are entrepreneurs, right? So I think going forward, the way the entrepreneurship model is shifting is that from a very me, my business, obviously it's my business, but I have to work on it in a very collaborative way, and that's going to be the focus going forward. And digital comes into the picture beautifully, because digital like makes you accessible, like, you know, like world is your oyster the moment you use digital as your playground, right, as your marketplace. So I think that's why that what COVID has done is it has brought in this shift in the model of working on businesses, which is more collaborative. It's thrown back words at us, like I think we are all seeing words like empathy, conscious businesses. Like, you know, you go on LinkedIn, you talk to fellow businessmen or whoever, and everyone's talking about how can we transform. So yeah, there are tools to make things digitally viable, but I think at the core of it, this is where design thinking comes into entrepreneurship, is asking yourself at this point in time when all our businesses are shaken, what is my next step? Why am I wanting to solve what I'm wanting to solve with my business, right? So the heart of innovation in today's day and age, especially now, is design thinking. And Kathy has beautifully explained that already. She's given us a framework. What I'm going to do is just to take this even further down to something very simple and just let everyone know that design thinking is not a global concept. In fact, we already know this as something which I'll introduce you to very shortly. But at the heart of it, it is a tool of innovation. It is very human-centered. It is people to people. It is all about integration. It is integrating the left brain and the right brain. And it's really talking about how can I build a business which identifies what's the need among people? How can I bring in and club technology with it? And how can I basically offer services which will bring success to my business? So at the heart of all this, we know this as Jugaad, which I think Meghdut very subtly spoke about in the beginning, but we gifted this concept to the world. So this is not something that's alien to us. So for the next few slides, I'm actually going to talk about how we should pat ourselves of, the fact that we all are experts in Jugaad, whether we know it or we don't, that's okay. But here are some examples which I feel COVID has thrown at us in some, so obviously Kathy has shared some very interesting examples. But I feel Jugaad, typically if you look at it, we always think of Jugaad as a quick fix solution, right? So look at this now, this milk delivery man, he's an entrepreneur as well. I mean, why not? You know, he's selling milk. And his immediate quick fix solution was he has to deliver. So he came up with this pipe-like thing of wanting to deliver the milk, right? A cashier. I find these little examples very fascinating because I personally have learned a lot of this, like I've learned a lot of ideas of that I can apply in my business by looking at these small examples around me, right? So that's why there's a reason I'm sharing these with you. There's another, COVID situation. Jugaad was this cashier. I found this example very fascinating. He's using a steam iron as a disinfectant for checks, right? Then obviously there's this other example, which is not COVID, but again, something which we locally know of. One engineer based in Kerala, obviously she couldn't afford a washing machine, so she converted that washing cum exercise machine. So you have to like cycle for 3 to 4 minutes for the clothes to wash, and you also exercise in the process. So these are just some very beautiful examples that we have known of. But in the COVID space, let's say, so those some examples I shared are, let's say, very solo entrepreneurs, very individual ways of applying design thinking. Here's a public sector of how they've applied design thinking. Railways, right? There are over like 5,000 railway coaches which were redesigned for COVID-19 patients. Like, look at this diagram of like this design, right? They've literally redesigned it to create these isolation coaches. So to imagine that given the complexity of the situation and the limited resources you have, you've still used this time. Sorry. Okay. So this is a public sector example of how they've been using Jugaad. This is one of my very favorite examples because I've been a part of the COVID task force, one of the first task force which was formed within 48 to 50 hours of the lockdown that was announced. And this was the first example that that really made me so happy that to see what was happening. And this is from your own city, Calcutta. So I just was like most excited to share this with you all. This is these schoolmates. One is in US, one is in Pune, and another is in Hyderabad. And they wanted to contribute and help in this whole, preparing face shields for Kolkata doctors. And they didn't know how to find the labor force to do this. So they quickly used their network, and they figured that the idol makers, right? The Durgama idol makers in Cal, they have lost their jobs. They are artisans. So they were the first ones who used artisans in the country to make face shields, right? It's a beautiful example, I think. So I think these are some of the examples to say how Jugaad is a part of our system. Now, why is it relevant for entrepreneurs is, again, going back to what Khyati spoke about, is three things that we really need to remember. That we are right now at this point in time, we have frugal resources. We are increasingly becoming very inclusive in nature because we are all becoming more collaborative by nature. That's the situation we are currently in more than ever. And we have learned to become very flexible. Like, look at this webinar we are doing. Look at the way work from home situations have arisen. Look at the way technology has enabled all of us to do that. Sitting in Bombay, I can contribute to something happening in Chhattisgarh. And, so Jugaad is basically getting all these things together, which helps me come up with a sustainable business idea that addresses a very specific why. It helps me define my what of the business, and it also allows me a support system to figure how will I deliver. So the why, what, and how of the business mechanics of how an entrepreneur needs to look at a business delivery today has shifted, and Jugaad or design thinking really allows it. The more we embrace it, it allows us to come up with very creative ways to plug all of this together. I just want to talk about, again, like in a webinar, it's very difficult to talk about all these things, in such great detail because it's not a templatized, like I can't say, okay, this is like one size fit model which works for all industries. So I feel this is a beautiful book, which again, Meghdut spoke about very briefly in the beginning. I feel it's a great investment in these times. I've been referring to this book for many years, and now especially I'm going back to it even more. It has some beautiful examples from India. But I think some key principles which I thought I would like to share with you here is that whatever I shared right now was more about Jugaad as a quick fix solution. And now going forward, as entrepreneurs, as businessmen, or even people in jobs, we need to start becoming very entrepreneurial in nature. And for that, we have to make Jugaad a growth mindset. Like, design thinking has to become all about our mindset now. I can't just do a certification course and say, hey, I've done a certification course, so I'm a design thinker. No, you have to be able to start applying it in your businesses or your jobs. So I think, how do you seek opportunity in adversity? How can I do more with less? How can I think and act flexibly? How can I look at all this agility around me with this complexity and, funnel it down to make things very simple? And how, obviously, not at the cost of my profit, not at the cost of my revenue. So I have to factor that in. And most importantly, and which is my favorite part of design thinking, is it allows us to follow our heart. It puts so much of, it allows us to put our heart in what the business, and which is why what like Khyati was saying, that the left brain and the right brain are coming together with this, with this philosophy. The prerequisites are, obviously, we need to start thinking like a startup. What is your why? What is your intention at this point in time? And see, again, these steps that we are mentioning are, I'm saying it in another way, Khyati said it in another way, but it boils down to the same thing. You can be at any stage of your business. Maybe your business is not as affected as maybe your neighbors, but we all are having to relook at our businesses and our work. So I think this flow really, like, to start thinking like a startup is very, very important because we are always working with limited resources. So ask yourself, what's your intention in this time, the why of your business? Keep developing a point of view by prototyping possibilities that will help you to figure what your services are. So what is your what? then plug and play different ways to how can you deliver this to your audiences. And don't forget that at the heart of it is all, COVID is bringing this new normal, so empathy is going to allow us to bring a new world order into the system. So when you plug all why, what, how, you come up with, you really start thinking like a startup. And like I've already mentioned this, it's very relevant in emerging markets, because gone are the days. I mean, I'm not saying that was not the right model, but yeah, like, to have this web-based tech company, and then, you go to a VC and you have outrageous amounts of money, that's really been a bastion of capitalism. And I think, today we have to start looking at how are we really building our businesses. Do we want to build businesses only when we have too much money with us? Or this is our time to really look at, as an emerging economy, our challenges are very different. Our market is still emerging. So our traditional models also need to change along with the mindset. And this is exactly where digital comes into the picture. Digital transformation comes into the picture. And we need to have a more calibrated approach, because everyone has been doing things in silos. Now, like I've already spoken about this collaborative model, that needs to be a system, where how we are educating each other, how we are upgrading ourselves, how we are creating a support system where everyone is benefiting while we are making progress in our individual businesses, right? Because entrepreneurial journey is it's a very solo journey, right? And I think these times are allowing us to become friends and collaborate and make that support system stronger. So and technology is beautifully allowing us to do that. Now, very quickly coming into the digital aspect of things, right? I'm not going to make this presentation very technical, because I do understand there's an audience like from across across the board, but I want everyone to understand this, that what do businesses need today as of 2020, right? Everyone is driving home the point that they need to become a very digitally transformed company, right? Everyone wants to deliver personalization. Everyone wants to improve the customer experience. Now, the customer experience, I'm not just talking in the sense of, a beautiful UX, UI, and what's the website and what's the, how an e-commerce flow is, but I'm also talking about a traditional model. How are you communicating with your audience today when everyone has gone digital? Are you only relying on social media, or are you building your own distribution channel? So there are many clients who I end up working with or I have conversations with, who are prospective clients. And there are many of them are traditional model companies. And when I ask them, like there's one who I've been talking to, it's like a 5-year-old company. All their database, everything is manual. So when I ask them, now that everything is gone, do you have anything, how do you convert this into an online setup? They don't have anything online, So this is the time. How do you create all that which has been there with you and give it a digital interface, right? Then also identifying the right technology. You may not know it personally, but sure, you can educate yourself. But these are the times where you can also hire specialists. You don't have to always invest in big teams, but hire specialists who can help you get to that goals, right? So because when you do that whole framework, like what we just shared, prototyping, and you figure the why, what, how, you will know what your KPIs are. KPIs, I'll explain what that means, is key performance indicator, which basically means what are your milestones of your business. So today, July 3rd, what is my milestone this year for my business? I don't know about 2021 yet because the times are so uncertain, but for the next 6 months, can I figure what my milestones are, and then figure what are the right tools and people I need to take it there with leading with innovation. So working in silos, I'm sorry, I'm saying the same thing again, but I just need to say it again that, working in silos is not going to be enough. What businesses need today are, a common ROI driven growth strategy. And this is something I wanted to leave you all with. I would have loved to share more case studies, but to be honest, the more I'm reading about successful case studies, or I was trying to find, I felt people are still trying to find, there are no everything that is available is secondary research for me. And I didn't want to share something till I'm 100% very sure of, knowing that this is the right example to share. But I want to leave you all with some actionables, which I think doesn't matter what industry you may be in, but I'm doing this, I'm suggesting the same things to my clients, and I feel you all can also adopt these. So first and foremost, this is a time for us to be a force of good for customers and employees. It's extremely, extremely important, because we can't forget that, you know, just because we are going through a crisis, you know, we forget the people we've built relationships with. So, you know, so it shouldn't look so transactional, and a lot of businesses have been transactional. So we have to, this is the opportunity for us to become purposeful brands. Do we care about them? Are we having conversations with them? How are we in touch with them virtually? Are we understanding what their pain points are? Because it's not just about being purposeful, but these interactions will also give us new ideas of what business or services we need to offer to these people we've built relationships with, you know. So that will give us some ideas as well. So yes, this is very, very important, and the world needs businesses to become more kind. So this is our opportunity. We can't forget that. So that's first. Second, this is the example that I was telling you, that at this point in time, let's look at the available data. Like I may want a lot of things, but I've lost a lot of business, etc. But what am I already sitting with? And a lot of us will already be sitting with, let's say, a database of our clients, or, you know, our customers or whoever. So I think the idea is, let's build our own distribution channel, right? It's very important. And this is something, again, I suggest a lot to my clients and you know, people, is we have set ourselves up for success by just completely depending on, you know, if there's so many people I meet for businesses, and I ask them, okay, so what's your, where are you available digitally? Oh, I'm on Instagram. No, you can't be. You can't just have Instagram as a distribution channel. It's a social media platform. You need to have your own distribution channel. So at this point in time, I would say, build your website, give a facelift to your company, build a website which talks about what your business is, have your own distribution channel, which allows you to build and continue that relationship with your customers. Then build an online marketplace. If your business, and I believe that, like what Meghdoot also was asking me, that there are a lot of brick and mortar and SME led companies, you know, build yourself an online marketplace, or find one where you can be a part of. Like Etsy today in India is suddenly growing, and it's giving a chance for independent sellers to be a part of a peer-to-peer marketplace. You know, either you can be a part of something like that, or you can start your own e-commerce. Like there are so many, and these are not that expensive, to be honest. You can, you know, have there are specialists you can get on board and get onto Shopify. And see, that's what digital has done. For everything, it's given you tools and templates to just use and put yourself out digitally. And where you feel you still need additional help, you get specialists on board. So that's made our lives a lot easier. Even for website, you don't know where to start making a website. There's WordPress, there is Squarespace. I mean, there's Wix. There are so many. You can just start there, but it's very important for all of us to give ourselves like enough digital identity or facelift. Next is new revenue streams, right? I think it's a great opportunity to see what are the things that have not worked, what are the things that are working, what are the things that maybe I wanted to tap into and I couldn't previously, but now is an opportunity, because maybe that's a market which, you know, is in COVID times, is like sort of, I think that's an audience which would like to listen to that aspect of what I wanted to sell. So identify that. This is where again, the prototyping that we've been talking about in the framework will come very handy, because you do little like, you know, you go to the market with some ideas and validate it, do some research, do some questionnaires, and you will get a lot of validation. And then you start developing that and build new revenue streams. And what has not worked, see tata bye-bye, let go of those, right? I personally am doing that, and I can say that to everyone. Next is collaborate. Invest in outsourced specialists and partners at fractional cost. I mean, gig economy is really picking up, and this economy is full of specialists, and we are all here to only help people, like especially entrepreneurs. So figure what kind of specialists you need. And today is the day and age of lean model. Those big teams and all, not needed. Why honestly, like, add to your cost? Keep your systems and your models, your team models limited, lean, and collaborate. And last but not the least, I just want to drive home like one last point, but very crucial point, that this is our time to filter and shift value proposition, right? And to build purposeful, people-led and profitable businesses, because look at the environmental situation around us. We are having to build conscious businesses. We are having to become conscious people and conscious entrepreneurs. So I think this is a beautiful opportunity to start applying these things in our respective work areas. And I just want to end with this, that, you know, when COVID came, we were forced into, you know, pausing. But I think now we've become a little expert at that. So let's pause consciously. Let's reflect. Let go of what's not working. Gather what you feel is working, and play with your strengths. You know, play with the areas where you're really like your business can grow. And creative thinking is really going to help us build sustainable businesses. So I think these are some of the ways I feel we can start applying digital ideas to make more digital transformed businesses. Yes.
Thank you so much, Amrita. I wish I had a marketing teacher like you in school, because it would have really made me pay attention in class. Marketing has never been something that I have personally felt that there's a lot to learn from marketing classes, but I just realized today it's because I didn't have teachers like you. Thank you so much for that wonderful presentation. I'm sure a lot of the people on the call would agree. It was almost like a masterclass, even if it didn't last very long. But it felt like there were so many things that were to be learned from those 20 minutes or so for which you spoke. I would like to touch upon a couple of points here which you've already taken on before I move on to our last speaker for the day. I think one of the things you said I really liked was about relatability. You know, you said that, you know, you have to be present for your customers when you're building a product, and even if it's not a product, if it's part of an existing system that you are, and you're building something new, you need to be in the minds of your consumer, not just at their good times but also their bad times, right? So you have to be there, present for them, being more conscious in terms of the kind of business we do. I think it's so essential, and you realize that now more than ever, because, you know, we've seen so many of these posts saying, you know, the nature is healing, and, you know, we saw dolphins in you know, right outside of Bombay, and, you know, we've seen so much of wildlife coming out of the streets, because for the longest time, and it's not really related, but for the longest time, we've always used business as a way to suck out of the earth. You know, we've tried to take away as much as possible instead of giving back in a way to not just to the environment but to society as well. And I think the COVID crisis has really given us that scope of looking back at our business models with a bit more empathy towards our fellow citizens of the world and to our environment as well. That couldn't we have thought it better? I mean, if a tiny little virus could potentially stop us in our tracks for 3 months, then was it all worth it? Was all of that deforestation, all of taking advantage of the people around us, or taking advantage of businesses or the environment around us, was it even necessary? And, you know, that brings me to a very interesting example of a company that I've been following for a while. It's called Fairphone, ladies and gentlemen. I don't know if you've heard of it, but it's just a phone that's built out of recycled materials, and it doesn't have like the most advanced camera and it doesn't change its model every 6 months. And it's something that we've seen with say an organization like Apple. We've seen that they practice sometimes this process called forced obsolescence, where they would push out updates which would make your previous phone slower, so that you are forced to buy new products. And because the products that they build are so aspirational in nature, you would continuously want to buy their newest products. But with an organization like Fairphone, what they do is it just has the bare bones, like a phone, which is still a smartphone, has a great camera, works on Android, very lean, still very fast. But it's something that more than that, you probably don't need. And for more conscious consumers, I think that's where the world is headed to. That's where we need a lot more, not design thinkers, I would say, because I really believe anyone can be a design thinker, but for regular people to be doing design thinking, even if improperly, just trying it out. It's the same way with sustainability, right? Like when you look at people like Greta Thunberg, who've been such a driving force for sustainability, I think her biggest achievement was not the fact that she's the youngest person standing there at the UN and making these grand talks. It's about the fact that she was able to move so many people around the world to do a little bit, to do that very little bit from themselves, which forms part of the mindset in which we are able to share the world with those who think of the world in a little more kindly, maybe. And I really like that bit. So thank you very much, Amrita, for bringing that bit out in as part of this presentation. It became almost philosophical at some point, and I really enjoyed that bit of the conversation. Without any further ado, I'd like to move on to our last speaker of the day, Ms. Madhu Agarwal-Amodia. Madhu, if you could, now we've known each other for quite a while, and I've seen the way that the way you look at problems, and not just from a problem-solving point of view, but from teaching younger people to adopt problem-solving techniques which are innovative at the very core. As an academician, where do you see the post-COVID world? Where do you see the new normal heading to? And as an educator, what have you done, or what would you be doing, not just in your personal capacity, but also in a professional capacity, to make sure that we can create this conscious world that we're talking about, this relatable world, this world where there are a lot more people thinking about the world from a design thinking scope of things? What would Madhu and her crew of educators be doing in the new normal? That's my question.
Yeah. Thank you, Meghdut, and thank you, Khyati and Amrita. You were wonderful. This is just to start with I also started my journey at EcoLintuit Lab. I was also a visiting faculty in Mumbai campus. So it's fantastic to be a part of a panel which have wonderful educators. And that's the philosophy we follow at EcoLintuit Lab. So you're just not there to make designers, you're just there to make conscious, sensitive designers. And Khyati and Amrita happen to be two of these educators. We have 55 odd educators in Mumbai campus, and similarly we would have in Kolkata campus, which just don't teach design as an expression, but design is supposed to be design thinking. There is a lot of thought which goes behind it, and you're taught about things like entrepreneurs and collaboration. You're just not going out in the market to work with people who don't know anything about these disciplines. So this is the need of the hour. To create a future set of designers, we have to look into all of these aspects, and we get all these professionals on board to teach our students what they are practicing in real life. This is where EcoLintuit Lab comes into the picture. This is our strength, and we've been following this philosophy in all our campuses, is to create a breed of new designers who actually look into all of these. And what I loved was weaved in so beautifully was actually the narrative where we realize that design thinking is jugaad, and it just makes you connect so deeply to India. So it's very, very important for us, all of us who are in India, to understand that what our roots are. And we will be global players, but we have to understand what our roots are. So our campus, I think, does that beautifully, is that we expose you to global philosophies, global practices, and then connect you back to the root and make you understand that at core, we are still practicing a lot of things which is Indian. Maybe they don't sound as glamorous, but in thought process, they are the same, and the soul is the same. Now, here is where I would connect it to my personal journey. Is when I was studying in London, I discovered India, which is very strange, because we have this real fascination to the global world, and we forget to tap our roots. London College of Communication made me realize and appreciate that I had a very deep set of Indian values, and which I've brought forward in my thinking as well as my creative work, which is why I traveled to the V&A Museum, and it gained a lot of appreciation. So it's very, very important for all of the listeners out there to understand that design is just not a physical manifestation or expression outside. There's a lot of thinking, there's a lot of research, and there's a lot of understanding of people and business which goes behind it. And to appreciate the fact about those designers, and these are the kind of designers who are now core to every industry in future. They're going to be core to every industry. Like India is short of 60% of designers for their ventures, and our kind of campuses are going to produce these kind of designers. We've come to Kolkata now. It's going to be our first year in Kolkata with Techno India University, and we are going to offer you this and way more exposure to understand what design thinking, and design application is all about. Thanks, Meghdut.
Thank you very much, Madhu. Thanks for giving that a little bit of information on what Ecole Intuit Lab is about. And I think I really like the point you made about the fact that you discovered India when you were in London. And I think it happens to a lot of people. You don't realize what's so close to your heart unless it's taken away from you in a way. You know,
Yeah.
we don't realize how how much we treasure our respiratory system until the day that you probably catch a deadly influenza or even COVID for that matter. And I really hope that people are staying safe and taking necessary precautions on that. An interesting example that just came to my mind because you were talking about Mumbai as well, and the Ecole Intuit Lab collaboration that we've had is not that old, and it happened very spontaneously. And during the same trip, I remember when I first went to Mumbai to talk to the Ecole team, I had met these other bunch of very interesting entrepreneurs at this place called the Makers Asylum. And there's this guy called Vaibhav Chabra, who did something very interesting during this COVID time. So Makers Asylum is basically like a workshop where a lot of young entrepreneurs go to prototype their hardware. So it could be anything if you're building an e-bike, or if you're building a new music system which works without any electricity, it just works on touch or haptics or whatever it is. You can go and build that at Makers Asylum. And during the COVID time, it was obvious that nobody was going to go to a workshop and build physical products. So what Vaibhav and his team very interestingly did was they started they created one docket, which was basically like a very intensive document, a very concise document on how to build your own face shields. And they created this entire process wherein thousands of entrepreneurs across the country started building face shields by the specifications created by Makers Asylum, sitting in their own homes, or if they had access to a small factory near their houses, which goes on to show not just the power of decentralized manufacturing, which is becoming more and more of a reality every day. Because having massive factories and then dealing with a lot of issues at the factories, we've seen so many factories closing down in recent times, and especially when when a global crisis or a pandemic strikes, we've seen that all of these brick and mortar businesses get very hard to run. So where else would have all of these face shields, which are to be used in airports or in planes or in hospitals, to have come, or even on the roads? And Vaibhav made it happen. He really made almost 1 million face shields within 1 month, and he could not have done that by himself sitting in a little workshop. He activated the entire country's entire country's workforce of makers to get it happen, which brings us back to that initial point that was made, which is collaboration. That is such an important way of design thinking, that you cannot do everything by yourself. Let's be honest, it's a world where it needs people to come together to help solve each other's problems. And if we do not understand what the other's problem itself is, how are we going to solve a problem for them? There are so many useless innovations I see, and especially with a hyper-capitalistic environment, as we see on TV, for example, in the US. If any of you've ever seen Shark Tank, there's some bizarre things you see. Somebody I saw one day had come up with a wine for cats. I have 6 cats at home, and none of my cats drink wine. I don't think if I ever left the most expensive bottle of Chardonnay in front of them, I do not think they would enjoy it, nor would they drink it. Why do we need to have a wine for cats? Why are massive multi-billion-dollar enterprise running executives and entrepreneurs putting in hundreds and thousands of dollars in useless innovations like wine for cats? That brings us to the very core of what design thinking is according to what I think. And everything comes down at the end of the day to the need of the people that you're serving. The same way that you cannot run a country if you do not understand what the people of the country want, you can't run a company without understanding your customers. And that's where it's deeply rooted in the mentality of the people running these organizations to be more conscious of what their customers want if they want to keep their businesses relevant even tomorrow in this, what we call the new normal. So I think that kind of brings us to the end of our formal session. We would, of course, be willing to take up questions from all of you. If you have any questions, feel free to write it to us on our chat. There is somebody I saw had written a question which I would like to answer before we get to the rest of them. And I would also like Khyati to come in here, maybe talk about her experience in working in the design space in Colombia, and how businesses have been dealing with the pandemic in Colombia differently from the way that they have as you've seen in India. Maybe we'll start with that and we'll come back to another question after that. So Khyati, over to you for a Q&A.
Thanks, Meghdut. So as I was saying, yeah, Colombia, it's been very interesting because normally when I've been traveling, like I stay for a month in a country and you don't really get to see or understand the culture. And now it's almost been 6 months. What's interesting is that Colombia also is not a very rich country. It's got a huge population. They have a lot of similar issues like we deal with in India. And what's interesting is, I think that's the one slide that I want to show you, which I'll come to. And in terms of like what the companies are going on, it's very similar, like the textile industry, the food industry, small businesses are suffering, trying to stay afloat. There are people who are innovating with like different things of like, so this is something that a really interesting company made. So for kids, what they did is they have the rompers and the jumpers for kids from like 2 months to 3 to 4 year olds. So they built a mask within a hoodie of the jumper. So it's kind of like really nice, like, you know, you don't have to put like those masks that you put on their faces because it's also uncomfortable for kids. So they're thinking about how they can just, because the mask is something that probably will become a part of daily life for a long time, they're integrating it into the way they're designing clothes. One of the inputs is also people are shopping mostly for a lot of like homeware, like clothes to wear at home and stuff. So they've made these hoodies and they've made masks integrated into it. Maybe I can share those pictures later on the forum because it's like really interesting to see. They have the Museum of Modern Art here, which just before the pandemic did an exhibition they had, which was about how we breathe and about like the respiratory system and everything. And they had these oxygen cylinders and tanks that were displayed in the room, which is slowly letting out bits of oxygen in the whole room. And I was chatting with the curator there and I was like, how does that, right? Because you can't experience that digitally, even though they've taken that exhibition online. And that's where we were like talking and debating about what are the things you cannot, like everything needs to go digital right now. Like they're feeling the need for everyone to have a digital presence. It's become imperative. And it's also being used to everyone's advantage. But then what do you do with very like tactile things like that, where you need to see and feel? And that's where, again, we come back to that human element in the human connection, where you can never get rid of about thinking about humans, right? So like, that's where you think about when the gallery space is open, you go back, you have to have that experience. You want to connect with other people. So yeah, it's interesting, but it's pretty much they're dealing with it in like very similar ways as in India and the world. One example that I'd really like to show is, if I can share my screen. And this is something that was literally very, very interesting. So obviously everybody who knows that I'm in Medellin, the first thing they ask me is like, oh, is it safe? Like, is it like what's happening there? And in 1991, just about 2 decades ago, it was known as the land of the narcos and the world's murder capital. And obviously that's the impression I had before I came to Colombia. Like I didn't have the plans. I was curious about the city. But then in 2013, Medellin was recognized as the world's most innovative city, and it was an award presented by the Wall Street Journal magazine and Citibank. So imagine a city goes from being like the murder capital and the drug capital to being the most innovative city. And this is where, so this is very similar again to like the slums that we have in India. They are what they call favelas here. And the population is really dense. They're again struggling with like thousands of people living in like small areas close to each other, and they're trying to find ways to control the COVID within it, because if it spreads here, it's very similar to what we were worrying about in Bombay with Dharavi and the slums, where it could just like spread and multiply. And then the city's infrastructure is not built to handle the number of cases. So they've obviously also had a very, very strict lockdown because they're trying to combat what they like. The mayor here is doing a lot to just make sure that it doesn't get to increasing cases. And Medellin has like one of the most intense and most the strictest lockdowns in the world. And this comes down again to talk about how the city has changed. So this is where people would probably have to walk up on a slope to go from like point A on the ground to point B, like right on top. And what they did is they made these escalators that you see in the picture here. So the government made, it's like right in the middle of the picture, if you guys can see it. They built these escalators just to to enable people to go from the bottom to the top without having to walk so much. And it's like a 385-meter escalator, takes you probably just 6 minutes to go from like ground up to. And all the art, like they've also, this was like one of the main areas of conflict during Pablo Escobar's time. What they've done is you see a lot of like color now in this here. So they've created like a whole, there's like art, there's murals, everything, all the houses that are just like painted, and it's actually become an art center of the city. So you go for tours there, you see all the artists and graffiti that's been done around. And what the government also did is that they helped people, they kind of like wiped out all the crime from here, but they also empowered people by helping them with jobs, helping them with money, building infrastructure. And this is what's admirable, that you can completely change the shape of a city, change it, because when the government gets involved, they're thinking about how to make the life of people better. And that's immediately when this is, the crime rate has gone down because the government's obviously taking care of the people. People don't need to resort to crimes to survive and to sustain. So this is just something very interesting. I'm still studying and learning about like the whole Colombian politics. It's obviously, there's a lot of corruption here too, but it's still an interesting case study.
Great. Thanks so much, Kathy. Thanks for sharing those little tidbits from Colombia. I would love to, I think Amrita has a question that's very much...
I just want to add to what Kathy was sharing, Meghdut, very quickly. I just feel that, you know, what I shared in my presentation about at the core of Jugaad is how are we sort of trying to build and contribute to sustainable development, right, with our businesses. And there's a lot of need for focusing on creating a grassroots level value system, like a value chain system, right? So I just want to give a very, like a quick example of something like this, but in a very different context from India. So I was involved with a project, so there's a social impact foundation called the Hunger Project, which does a lot of capacity building for women sarpanches in India. You know, there are some 6 to 7 states, and you know, it's one thing to hear about it and feel fascinated, and it's one thing to actually go at the grassroots level and to see the kind of development that they have done. It is literally, and I think that is, again, I think the way that model has been built, and you know, it's same like this. It's like, I'm not saying that those were crime places, those states, but it's like at a grassroots level, how do you politically empower, like women are politically empowered to create a shift, and they are given a support system at a grassroots level, which is not just doing stuff, but at a mindset level. How do you have conversations to break the patriarchal narratives, you know, which are very difficult. I mean, you can't just go and have a conversation. How do you systematically do that? That again is I feel a very great example of design thinking, of how do you apply design thinking at grassroots level politics, and in a way where you're also empowering women. You know, we all want, so I think when we see examples like these, it just gives us, to be honest, ever since I did that project, I had to go and like document and create content. But I came back and I'm like, my God, I need to start applying those things in urban areas, because I don't see much of that happening here. So which is what I said, like, you know, I'm always picking and I'm observing and I'm seeing, okay, how can I plug and play something I learned from there and apply it here? That's how we train ourselves to become design or whatever, start applying design thinking in our lives. So thank you, Kathy. I think this example is very fascinating.
I think I also want to add to what Meghdut said initially, was about, you know, that there's so many products and do we need to keep creating new things. So I feel like we have a lot of things. What needs to be done is innovating within those. Yeah. Obviously create products if there's an absolute need, but innovate within what you have to make people's lives better. Our needs are changing, our lifestyle is changing, which is why you constantly need to innovate. Something that you designed, say, 40 years ago may not be relevant today, but it doesn't need to be discarded completely. There are certain things from like back in the day which we still use today, right? So it's about like being very, very conscious of why we are creating, what is the need, what is the need we are really filling? Like, do we need to fill the world with more things that nobody wants to buy, right? And now this is the biggest time where people have realized that they're not just buying things for the sake of it. And in 4 months, when they can survive with very little, that's going to affect the markets even more. So people need to start thinking about how they can adapt their businesses, because otherwise that's what's going to help them. That's going to be like a failure to survive later.
And that's why circular economy is really picking up now. I think reusable, reinventing the wheel. So a lot of people, I've been reading a lot of examples of how people who've been in, who are in the business of clothes, are now changing their value proposition to creating reusable, like creating business models where they are, talking about reusing clothes and repurposing clothes. So it's very interesting. It's like from that, how do you reduce waste through your own and still being a business? I think that marriage is like quite an interesting thing, which I'm seeing this circular economy in so many different contexts. So I think all of us are having to see how we can contribute to that. Sorry, Meghdut.
And with the designing, you can immediately see the benefits of it in the products that you put out, because there is customer satisfaction. And the minute people are happy, you see that you put a good product out, and then the cycle continues, because you can instantly see how your ideas and how, when you think about people, it's working and being so like well received.
I think we have so many points. This could be, I think the Q&A section of this webinar itself is more interesting than most other webinars I've attended in these last couple of months, and God knows I've attended a few. I think we have a very interesting question. I think there's two questions. There's one from somebody who said that, from Momita, actually. She's a professor at one of our business schools. She says that, about this mindset of letting go. I'm not sure I completely understand the question, but Amrita, do you want to maybe quickly touch up on that topic and how it can become part of their personality and their definition?
Sorry, I'm just trying to read that question. Can you read the question?
I think the question, it says that the let go and gather idea is wonderful and is itself raw material for training and design thinking. How do we create the mindsets for thinking about letting go with humans that becomes part of their personality, their definition, etc.?
Okay. Now, firstly, that's a very philosophical question, so I won't get into that aspect of it. I will just focus on how do we apply it. I'll give my own example, right? So for instance, this year I had a plan to launch a couple of things as new services, right? Now, and I really believed that this was like following my heart, and I really was working on this. And come like whatever lockdown, and suddenly it was not. And those services actually also gave me an opportunity to work with they got me two kinds of partnerships, which I really wanted to sort of work on. But as I started working on it, I realized that this COVID and this pause and play and all that I was sharing with you is not something that I've just come up with. I've experienced it myself. And it was making me realize that as I move ahead, I want to play with my strengths, because I have only that much, that I only have limited resources, and like, again, I am one person, I can't do too many things. So how can I calibrate, collaborate, work on a lean model and still do more of everything that I want to do? So when I was trying to put my thoughts like that, in that sort of a way, I felt that one particular service was suddenly not making sense anymore in this new normal, and I was so attached to it, and I'm like, oh God, like it's one thing to feel like, oh my God, I want to launch it, and some competition will come and do this. And that's when we have to tell ourselves that it's a very personal journey. If it's making sense, do it. But like this time is allowing us to just think to that idea a little more and wait for the right time to be able to launch it. So let go from that perspective, detach yourself from that idea, because as entrepreneurs, I feel that impatience is something that I've always heard of entrepreneurs as being the most impatient lot. Everyone wants everything now, or everything that has to we have to shift. So that's why the mindset shift will happen with a behavior shift, because it's very important, and I think this letting go is a process of that. It's not something that I can put a PPT and make anyone explain it. But like I said, the idea is to learn to detach what's not working in the current times and park it and see if you can introduce it later. But that's how we learn the letting go in business. Hopefully that answered your question.
Thanks so much, Amrita, for those insights. We also have another question from Rana Basu Thakur. I go back with Rana many, many years now, and he's somebody who's also been very keen growth hacker and has worked in Reliance and worked in a lot of marketing companies as well. Very, very pertinent questions. He asks, what are your takes on the government, public, private, social entrepreneurial design collaborations, and how can they help in empowering the less privileged? Khyati, Madhu, Amrita, any of you, it's an open question. If you feel free.
In fact, I work, as much as I work with the entrepreneurs, local entrepreneurs, I work a lot with social entrepreneurs as well. And I feel that there is one example that I want to share of this foundation. It's a think tank that I'm associated with as a mentor once in a while. It's called Vriksh. It's based out of Nagpur, and I think it's one of I think you can just check out what they do, and it'll really help you understand. I think what I beautifully like about their model is that they've been working with a lot of state governments to impart entrepreneurial education in the local communities. So like if a carpenter wants to feel empowered as an entrepreneur, what kind of skills does he need? So I think they have a very beautiful model where they, in fact, Abhijit, who's the founder, he speaks about, he's a champion of design thinking, and he talks a lot about how he's bridging government and local communities to create more empowerment through entrepreneurial education. So I mean, I'm just saying that there are enough examples right now. This one stands to me. One can dig in further to know what they do.
I can maybe take on another example. I find this. Khyati wants to say something. No, ladies first.
No. Talk about.
After you. Now you have to say it.
No, I mean, I was just talking about that this is where the design of countries comes into place, right? Like if you take care of all stratas of society, then the whole country grows and the whole country develops, which is why the government, public, private sector need to work together and collaborate. Right now what's happening is in our country, like the poor get poorer, the rich get richer, the middle class stays where it is because there is no communication and contact, and there is no, like people are not working together, right? Everybody's seeing their own gains and everybody's seeing their own benefits. But the minute all these three, if they came together and you uplifted the poor, if you uplifted the lesser privileged, automatically the whole country grows. So many of our issues would go away if we empowered everybody, we educated everybody. And there the government and the private sector have the potential to incorporate the public sector into it too. So I feel like it's very, very important for it to be thought together.
Yeah. So,
yeah. I think Madhu, yes.
So I've worked on a lot of CSR projects, corporate social responsibility space with a lot of big companies. One of them was Ambuja Cement Foundation. And, what they largely do is a lot of vocational training across India. So they've put in fantastic setups where they are collaborating with state governments to offer that. And they again train people. So I was fortunate enough to be a part of the where we did the entire communication design. So what I actually do like now is that a lot of corporate sectors are also joining and becoming a part of this journey, because I think just for local communities and governments to do it together, it's going to be difficult. And I think more and more corporates have to join hand to make these, more tangible and a bigger movement. So I felt that they actually did quite a bit in that space, which was very interesting. Yeah.
I mean, if I think all of us who've gone to business school have probably heard of this particular book called The Fortune at the Bottom of the Pyramid, right? by C.K. Prahalad. And I think it's all of the insights that we got from the speakers kind of bring us back to the same idea that if we are not helping develop the bottom of the pyramid, which is like, the people who are certainly less privileged, but in no means, less able. If we're not able to empower them, then we are probably not going to lead towards a better, more skilled, country in general. And there's one example that I really like. It's a gentleman I met a few years ago. His name's Amitabh Shah. And he created this organization called Yuva Unstoppable. It's this organization based out of Gujarat, which very early on Amitabh realized that the reason why a lot of young kids drop out of school, especially out of government schools, was not because the courses were boring, or was not because there was not enough classrooms or whatever, or the lack of midday meals. Was it because that the toilets were not hygienic enough? And what he did was something very interesting. This is something that he started this journey about 7-8 years ago. He started working with local governments to build better quality toilets, and he's done that across, I think, if I'm not mistaken, maybe 20,000 government schools, starting with Gujarat, then in Maharashtra, in Madhya Pradesh, Chhattisgarh, and he's tried to work in West Bengal as well. We've talked about a potential collaboration, but it just goes on to show that he comes from a very interesting background. His grandmother used to be the chief minister of Gujarat a long time ago. So he was already very well connected with the government ecosystems. And in terms of privilege, he's obviously very, very privileged. He comes from a great family, went abroad for his education. He's from Yale, so on and so forth. But when he came back, he figured that if he was not able to help with the grassroots level development of the country, then he was not probably doing a good enough job of utilizing his privilege. And so he created this entire story of Yuva Unstoppable, and he's gotten support from massive superstars to film actors to people, investors putting in money, and he did the right thing. He bridged the gap between what had to be done by the governments, but they were unable to do it, and found enough money to propagate better quality of education as well. So I think it's a no-brainer that we absolutely need to tap into the bottom of the pyramid, because that's where so much of the beauty lies. The only thing I would want future entrepreneurs to be a bit careful about is because a lot of us, and it's a primarily Western mindset, I think, of the savior, the savior mindset that, I'm going to go to India, or I'm going to go to South America, and I'm going to save these poor people because, oh God, they're so poor, and oh God, they definitely cannot survive without our help. It's definitely not true. I mean, there's more innovation to be found in such areas than there is in most of the biggest cities in the world. If you think about the word jugaad, I don't know if a lot of people know about this, but jugaad was in fact the name of a car, which was in Rajasthan, and the car was based. So in a particular village in Rajasthan, the journey from the train station to the local village was very long, and people had to usually walk that entire way when they would come into that town. So a few people in the Gram Panchayat, they came together and they came up with the idea: why can't we come up with just a functional car, a small car with wheels and a platform, and that's it. And so we could, and what they did was they took an old tractor motor and they attached it to it. And it was just basically a platform with 4 wheels, and they called that the jugaad, and the word was termed from that. So if you're talking about the fortune at the bottom of the pyramid, that even the term that we today are so proudly flaunting in front of our Harvard students and talking about it from this very upper class point of view, actually started in a village, in Rajasthan. So again, goes on to show there's so much work to be done in this particular field. And I think today we've made it amply clear through this webinar that design thinking, just because it has the word design in it, has very little to do just with taking crayons and paints and using paint brushes on a piece of paper. It really goes very deep down into what human beings truly believe in, and how we can create more sustainable businesses for tomorrow. They're also in making sure that we ask ourselves the right questions. Do we in fact need more businesses at all? Are we not sufficient in where we are right now? How can we improve the existing businesses and take it forward? On behalf of the Bengal Chamber of Commerce, I would like to thank all of our speakers today. And it's been such a wonderful session. I don't think we will be able to take any more questions because we are almost bordering on the 2-hour mark. I'd also like to thank Deepak Daftari, the chairperson of the Bengal Chamber, for helping us put together something like this. And for a formal vote of thanks, I would like to request our member candidate of the Bengal Chamber, Mr. Abhijit Hazra, who's an entrepreneur himself and has been a supporting factor for every one of us at the Bengal Chamber of Commerce, especially at the Entrepreneurship Committee. He's a lifetime member of the committee. We would love to hear a few words from him and maybe a formal vote of thanks for all of the rest of the speakers and everyone else at the Bengal Chamber. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. That'll be all from my side. This is Meghdut Roy Chaudhary signing off.
Thank you so much, Meghdut.
Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you, Meghdut. Yeah, it's a wonderful session. It's a fantastic sessions. Yeah, starting with the concept of design thinking and how design thinking can really change the way we think. Not only, in the traditional times, but also in the present challenging COVID times, we call it a new normal scenario, where, we have to think out of the box to sustain our business, to sustain our professions, to, create a collaborative ecosystem to, grow, create our livelihood ecosystems and so on. So I would like to thank Ecole Intuit Lab and Techno India University for this wonderful, program that we could have hosted from Bengal Chamber of Commerce. So thank you for the fantastic initiative that has been taken by Intuit Ecole Lab and Techno India University. So I would like to thank 3 of our very fantastic speakers, 3 lovely ladies today, giving us fantastic insights on design thinking, what is all about. So I would like to start with our first speaker, Kathy Shah, who all along from Colombia today in the early morning graced us with a fantastic speech, started the program, started the stage about design thinking and how design thinking can be implemented into our real life scenario, how it can, create a framework to change the way we think, to, set a stage about, create an evaluation about the way we run business, about the way we, organize our profession. And she given some fantastic example and case studies, one of which is about Lijjat Papad, a very, very, humble rooted social initiative started by some village women, transformed into a, huge cooperative of a 300 crore business today. So thank you, Kathy, for your wonderful speech today. I would like to thank the other speakers, our second speakers, Amrita G. Haldipur. Yeah, thank you, Amrita, for your fantastic speech. Discuss something, about Jugaad, our homegrown innovative approach, some, very, humble social initiatives, some case studies, how in the changing scenario during COVID times, delivering milk, converting train coaches into COVID beds, transforming of manufacturing facilities into manufacturing of masks, PPE kits, sanitizers, and so on, has been, reinvented by our entrepreneurs. And you have also talked about the collaborative model between the entrepreneurs. That is the need of the hour. More and more collaboration will be needed during the new normal scenario where, we have to sustain ourselves and grow ourselves by more and more collaborations. You have also talked about digital approach, how Indian MSME can win by adopting digital approach, by creating their own marketplace, creating their own, digital footprints, apart from footprints in social media, because a lot of startups and MSME think that by creating a footprints in social media will be sufficient, but this is not. You have to create your own marketplace, you have to create your own web presence, you have to create your you have to do digital marketing, adopt digital marketing, and being a outsourced CMO of different startups, CMO as a service, because I loved the concept very much, because one time we have started a concept called CIO on demand. We had a pool of ex-CIOs in our organizations where we offered the service of CIO on demand. So CMO on demand, what Amrita is offering, really fantastic, experience is sharing with a lot of startups who can't afford CMO like her, but can afford her service as CMO as a demand. And she has shared her experience, how the digital marketing can transform the marketing approach of a company, and for the startups and the MSMEs in this difficult times. And I would again like to thank our last speaker, Madhu Agrawal Amodia. She has shared her journey of Ecole Intuit Lab in their journey in Mumbai, as well as they have started their centers in Kolkata in collaboration with Techno India University, and it's a nice journey, having a bunch of innovative great designers as their faculties, and booming budding designer aspirants as their students, creating designer ecosystems in India, in Mumbai and Kolkata both. So and also she had also shared an insight to be global, think global, but be local, have your root in local, connect you with your root, because India traditionally has a lot of innovations, we had a lot of innovations amongst us, and a lot of traditional innovations, social innovations. We so-called Silicon Valley approach does not, we don't know that a lot of social innovations are happening, in villages, in tier 2, tier 3 cities, where people in so-called unprivileged and underprivileged area coming with a lot of traditional innovations. I was working once upon a time. I was working with a group of social entrepreneurs with the National Innovation Foundation in Ahmedabad, that was basically founded by IIM Ahmedabad and Department of Science and Technology, Government of India. Their motive was to bring traditional innovations and social innovations from the grassroots level, to promote grassroots innovations, validate those grassroots innovations, and try to commercialize those grassroots innovations. So we have to also think of those social innovations, follow our roots, support those social innovations, what Madhu already told about. And apart from that, that's the mesmerizing sessions we have. So we'd like to thank our fellow friends from Bengal Chamber of Commerce, from my committee. First I'd like to thank Deepak for his welcome address and help us to organize this session. I would like to thank Meghdut, a powerhouse, a moderator of this session, has a lot of passions about the concept, the design thinking, the social innovations by and large, he had introduced all the speakers with great passions and with deep insight, and also contribute a lot about today's sessions. So I cannot think anyone better moderating this session than Meghdut. Thank you, Meghdut. So again, I would like to thank all the other speakers, Khati, Madhu, and Amrita. Thanks a lot. We would probably love to have another round of webinars, a series of webinars. That may be the series one of the webinars we can actually think of on design thinking. Apart from that, I would like to thank my fellow members from Bengal Chamber of Commerce, Shivam, Devjit, Amrita, without whose support this program cannot be, organized. Last but not the least, I would like to thank all the participants. We have a fantastic participations today. The participants enriched and energized our speakers to have to conduct this session so well. And we had rather have a very interesting question answer sessions today. One of the most interesting question answer sessions I have attended during, a lot of webinars I have attended during the COVID times. And this is one of the, webinars where, we had a very, very, interactive and, interesting questionnaire session. So I would like to end this sessions by, again, deliberating on that that may be the series one of many sessions that we may conduct with our lovely speakers we had today on design thinkings, and we can also deliberate more on that topic and take this series forward. So thank you all. Thank you again for joining these sessions, making this session so interesting and so mesmerizing. So thank you very much. Good evening.
Thank you, Mr. Azra. I also wanted to point out that if any of our participants want to take certain discussions forward with any of the speakers, they are more than welcome to connect with Shivam from the chamber side, and Shivam will coordinate it to take the discussions forward for any of further doubts, help, or collaborations that they might be interested with either Techno India, Meghdut, Intuit Labs, or any of the speakers.
Thank you very much, Deepak. Thank you, Abhijit. I think with that, we come to the end of today's session. Have a lovely evening, everyone. See you all.
Thank you, everybody. Have a nice evening.
Thank you, everyone. This was lovely.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you all. Thank you.